Hello, and welcome to Keilah Reads. Happy Easter Sunday. It's a beautiful day in Indianapolis. And today, say hi to Gizmo behind me here. I'm going to read you a short story that I wrote for one of my classes for my associate's degree at Indiana Wesleyan. And this is based on an actual episode in my childhood. It's called Shaking the Sugarplum Tree, and I finished it April 17th, 2005. Shaking the Sugarplum Tree. When I was a small child, my parents separated before their divorce. My father took my mother and me and left us with my mother's mother in the northeast corner of Alabama. Most of my earliest recollections date to that time when I lived there with my mother and my grandmother outside Stevenson, Alabama, on my great-aunt Pat Crabtree's property. My time with my grandmother was limited to 7 years, but they were wonderful years filled with love. My grandmother had a way of making the ordinary into something extraordinary. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite and most magical memories from that time. The year was 1968. It was late winter. We lived in the woods up next to a mountain about 10 miles from the closest town. Our closest neighbors were family members, and they lived about a mile away. We didn't have a car. We didn't have much of anything but the clothes on our backs. Most of our amusements involved reading and storytelling. I loved the poems and nursery rhymes that my mother and grandmother would read to me. I would be wide-eyed with anticipation to know what would happen next. I particularly loved hearing stories that included an element of magic. I believe in God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, but I also believed in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. One sunny day, when I was particularly bored, my grandmother decided to tell me a story about a very special tree. This tree was one of the most rare of all the trees on earth. It was called the Sugarplum Tree. As I recall, only the best-behaved little boy or girl could shake the Sugarplum Tree and receive its bounty. If you were lucky enough to find this rare tree, there was a very specific method to get that candy. You had to close your eyes, wish with all your might, and then you must shake the Sugarplum Tree. If you were a good enough little girl or boy, the Sugarplum Tree would reward you with a shower of candy. As fate would have it, my grandmother and mother told me that they believed they had found a Sugarplum Tree right in our woods not too far from our house. They told me, casually, that if I wanted to see it, they would take me. Well, as you might imagine, I did indeed want to see it. I remember wearing a little dress that my grandmother had made for me, which she called a granny dress. The dress went down to my feet and the sleeves went down to my wrist to discourage mosquito bites, briar scratches, and to keep me warm in winter. Since it was chilly at this time of year, I wore a scarf folded crossways to a point, then tied around my head. This was done so that the wind wouldn't blow into my ears and cause an earache. I also remember wearing a little apron on that day so long ago. Once we had our jackets on, it was time to go outside. We only went a short way into the woods and then stopped at a small, scrubby-looking tree. At first I didn't see anything magical about it. It was mostly bare, like all the trees at that time of year, except for the evergreens. It didn't look very special to me at all. Grandma directed my attention up and told me to look very carefully. Suddenly, I saw the most amazing sight. Candy was growing right from the tree. There was little Tootsie Rolls and butterscotch discs and caramels on various branches. I could barely believe my eyes. I was wide-eyed and silent with awe. I'm sure my mouth must have been hanging open. I felt honored to see such a magical sight. Mama and Grandma told me to hold out my little apron and make a pouch of it with one hand. They told me to close my eyes, make a wish, and shake the Sugarplum Tree. I was still very young, so they helped me to make a pouch of the apron and guided me as I put my hand on the Sugarplum Tree so I could shake it, since I could not see it with my eyes closed. They told me to wish very hard. I did. I shook the Sugarplum Tree. Miraculously, candy fell down into my outstretched apron, and it was loaded full. I had been a good girl, and the mysterious and magical Sugarplum Tree had rewarded me for it. Now that I am an adult, of course I know that my mother and grandmother created that Sugarplum Tree especially for me. Although I know it was subterfuge, just like the stories of Santa and the Tooth Fairy, I can't help but smile when I think of that time. It's a bittersweet memory for me, because in it I can see how very poor we were, but I can also see how much they loved me. It's a special memory I will never forget. In writing it down, I hope that people who read this story will see that there really is magic in our world. The magic at work here is the magic called love. I truly believe that, and I wish you love, and I wish you peace, and so does Gizmo, my little Mogwai. See you later. Peace.